Yes, this video is out of season. Also yes, the idea for this video didn't hit me until about 2 or 3 weeks until the season ended. Setting that aside, this video will just be a series of quick binge reviews for Spy Family, Cour 2, Chainsaw Man, and Bocchi the Rock. It should go without saying, but this video will contain spoilers for all 3 of these animes. I haven't read the source materials for any of these and have only seen the animes, so there won't be any spoilers related to those. Let's begin with Spy Family. Cour 2 of Spy Family feels pretty decidedly worse than Cour 1 to me. Obviously, there's still much of the same old trimmings that you could expect if you watched Cour 1. The anime's still funny and the characters are still charming. But there's something about Cour 2 that just feels like it's lacking the kind of depth or soul that Cour 1 had. I think there's 2 main reasons for this, with one of these being far more significant than the other. To get the more minor reason out of the way, there's a pretty significant change to the formatting of a large number of episodes. In Cour 1, you could expect one small, self-contained storyline per episode and that would pretty much be it, and the pacing remained very nice and steady at all times. In Cour 2, there's a number of episodes that'll tell 2, sometimes 3 different stories back to back, and this really did a number on the anime's pacing due to these episodes having an inherently faster pace. Not knowing the source material, I can't say whether this is a result of following the manga closely or if it's a sequence of chapters cherry-picked during production. However, I can say for sure that this stretch of 5 or 6 episodes in Cour 2 that followed this format of multiple shorter stories is where most of my interest for Cour 2 burned out, which I'll elaborate more on in a minute. My biggest issue with Cour 2 is a far greater lack of intimate character moments. By this, I specifically mean moments of deep, profound emotion where a character has a realization about themselves and their place within this unusual family. These almost always come in scenes where the comedy and/or the action comes to a halt, and it's obvious that everything is being taken seriously for a little bit. 2 of these in Cour 1 that always stood out to me in a really special way were the end of episode 1 when Lloyd takes Anya back home after rescuing her, and the middle of episode 4 when Lloyd almost punches a very rude schoolteacher. Aside from those 2, Lloyd developing doubts about Yor in episode 9 is probably my favorite example. Cour 2 doesn't really contain the same kind of emotional essence that Cour 1 did. There's a few moments sprinkled throughout, such as sparks of it here and there during the episodes incorporating Bond into the main cast, as well as episode 24 or episode 12 of Cour 2, but nothing here feels like it treads emotionally new ground that struck me in a profound way like some of the moments in Cour 1 did. So when you combine this, together with the first reason of the formatting, it results in a large chunk of episodes in the middle that's a fast-paced cycle of comedic short stories with nothing to break the pacing. Some people will love this about Cour 2 since it provides plenty more of comedy, which is admittedly one of the series' selling points, but I found myself burned out on the anime as a result of how similar a lot of these episodes ended up feeling. Slice of life isn't a genre I care for a whole lot because my main problem tends to be that there can be long stretches of time where nothing of relevance happens. I understand that this can be one of the appeals of slice of life for fans of the genre, where it's simply about watching characters do whatever rather than following along an actively progressing story. That simply just isn't for me, but I never ran into that issue with Cour 1 due to the point that I just addressed. I know this has been a largely negative segment on Cour 2, but that doesn't mean I hate it or anything like that. I quite liked Cour 1, and it managed to bypass some of my usual nitpicks with the genre. While it doesn't retain what I consider to be the best aspects of Cour 1, a lot of what made Cour 1 excellent still carried over, like the comedy and the characters like I talked about earlier. In particular, I think the episodes introducing Bond at the start of Cour 2 are pretty good, and so is the tennis arc in the second half. In particular, I think the short bit about the spy Daybreak is the funniest bit in the entire anime so far because of Daybreak's sheer incompetence and Lloyd's inability to do anything about it. But yeah, if comedy and the characters are the only main takeaways for Cour 2, then I still think it's noticeably worse than Cour 1 was. Moving on to Chainsaw Man, I think I'm ultimately positive about it, but I don't know why I feel so uncertain about this. It might probably have to do with how Chainsaw Man ultimately handles a handful of themes in a really nice way, but the method by which it both introduces and proceeds with this handling is extremely distinct, to say the least. The best description I've been able to come up with is that Chainsaw Man handles mature themes in the most immature ways possible. It's all thanks to the main character Denji, who is a literal man-child, and I mean that in the best way possible. I really like how this character is introduced at the start of the anime with him getting nickel and dimed out of almost 400,000 yen, but then writing it off like it's no big deal because this is the norm to him. It is no big deal. He was saddled with a debt left by his father, and all Denji really has going for him is his devil dog Pochita, the rickety old shack he lives in, and a significant lack of human interaction. One of the key points of Chainsaw Man is watching Denji learn about concepts like having a dream or physical versus emotional intimacy from a rather immature perspective, since he never got to have a childhood, so he never really got to grow up. A lot of this manifests early on in him screaming about wanting to cop a feel, which honestly got very annoying very quickly, until eventually the anime elaborates on Denji's dream being as important to him as other characters' dreams are to those characters. His dream might not be as grand as other people's, but he sure as hell cares about it just as much as everybody else does about their big stupid dreams. I quite like how the anime handles Denji's view of intimacy, because you can very clearly see how his different interactions with different people shapes his perspectives. He initially places his dream on a massive pedestal before he finally gets to experience it with power, which causes his entire world to come crashing down when it's not what he expected it to be. Makima gives him a pep talk about intimacy, which is then demonstrated right away when Denji turns down Himeno's offer of a kiss, although he fails to resist her when she offers a little extra. Regardless, that's still character growth at work here. Setting some of the themes aside, I think the characters are also all handled pretty well. I already spoke about Denji a bit, but I also quite like Aki, and my favorite character is Himeno. The fights are equally good too, with the Katana Man fight at the end being my favorite. Something about the CGI when it involves very direct shots of Chainsaw Man looks awkward and stiff, but outside of that I think it looks nice. I like the setup for the Eternity Devil fight quite a lot, even if the ending is just okay. The Leech Devil, despite being one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen in my life, is another great one with how Denji has to navigate the whole situation with his stubby little chainsaw, and the reveal of the Fox Devil decapitating the Leech Devil makes for a really satisfying finish to the fight. The last thing I'll say about Chainsaw Man is the few episodes in the second half where everybody pulls out a gun and kills basically everybody that we've been introduced to. In hindsight, I enjoyed those episodes quite a bit after knowing more about how that event shaped later events in the anime, but I remember at the time being really weirded out by the tone of the anime because it felt so different with Denji not being an actively present character during that time. All in all, Chainsaw Man gives me a headache when I think about it because it clearly has an identity it wants to present itself with, but it does it in such a specific way that's hard to take seriously at face value, even if what's underneath is actually quite well made, and I know that doesn't sound like the nicest way to end this section on, but I really do mean it as a genuine compliment. So Bocchi the Rock is my favorite anime on this list, and it's by quite a large margin as well. I went into it expecting nothing but the same stuff everybody saw from all the clips that have been circulating, but it turns out that this anime was actually really good. I was genuinely impressed with how well the anime handled character progression with Bocchi, and while the surrounding cast doesn't get the same kind of careful treatment, they're all still written quite well. As the anime rolls on, Bocchi extremely slowly but steadily creeps out of her shell, and while she might not have gotten very far from her starting position by the end, she sure did take a lot of tiny baby steps. At first, Bocchi can barely keep herself together in a one-on-one conversation with Nijika, even though Bocchi desperately wanted somebody to come talk to her. This later progresses into things like her approaching Kita first, even if Kita ends up doing most of the heavy lifting for the rest of their interactions. Eventually, these baby steps evolve into moments like when Bocchi spontaneously takes the lead during a live show to re-motivate the rest of the band after a bad opening, or Bocchi being able to overcome a sudden problem during a show in front of a large crowd while maintaining her composure. I talked earlier about the intimate emotional moments in Core 1 of Spy Family, and these moments in Bocchi the Rock are really similar to that. Everybody knows this anime for its insane presentation, and a lot of credit is rightfully deserved for all the creative liberties taken here. But despite some of these sequences going really above and beyond expectations, like the Sports Festival one, I was kind of surprised to find that these sequences ended up being shockingly good representations of Bocchi's anxiety. I never really expected this because every time you see these clips online, they're almost always presented with no context. Those moments of creatively liberal presentation really help sell the fact that while Bocchi takes a lot of baby steps throughout the anime, each step requires a colossal amount of effort. So when the anime brings it all to a peak during any of its major life performances, of which there are 3, the anxiety feels palpable while the results are extremely well deserved. The 2 that stood out to me the most were the ones in episodes 5 and 8. In episode 5, they're able to put together a solid enough audition to be allowed a live show, which ends with Bocchi running into stomach problems. And then episode 8 is the one I talked about a moment ago with Bocchi taking the lead after a bad start. These shows are never clean, never pristine, but that's okay since they're intended to be obstacles to overcome. The 3rd show in episode 12 is also very good, but I don't think it punches quite as hard as the other 2. Of course, it's very nice to see Bocchi be able to overcome a problem on the fly rather than having a breakdown at the first sight of it like she would have in the past. But compared to episodes 5 and 8, which were very good and very good respectively, it was lacking just a little bit of extra impact. If you're looking for a recommendation out of this list, it's absolutely gotta be Bocchi the Rock. It's easily one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. Chainsaw Man might be a bit more of a hit or miss since it might be too gory for some people and the humor is pretty juvenile to say the least, even if that is thematically consistent with how the anime flows. And while Spy Family Cour 2 is my least favorite entry on this list, the main reason for it being the lowest recommendation is the existence of Cour 1. I highly recommend Cour 1, and then you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to keep watching the series and try Cour 2. That'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching it. If you enjoyed it, then please consider liking it and maybe subscribing to this channel. Like I said at the start of the video, this video would be better if it came out a lot earlier, but I didn't think of it until I finished the Arknights video. Maybe I'll do more of these in the future. I don't know, no plans on that, but we'll see. The next video is... It's planned, I know what it's going to be about, but I kind of don't want to talk about it because I don't think there's any nice way to put it. But I'll just leave it at that. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, take it easy.